Hey, I'm John Cannell, and today on Preppy Kitchen, we're making some delicious homemade rye bread. So let's get started. First off, in the bowl of your stand mixer, we're gonna add 1.5 cups or 360 mils of warm water. It's about 110 or so degrees. If you're making this on an ice cold day, rinse your bowl out with some warm water so it doesn't cool your warm water too fast. Our yeast needs some food in the form of sugar, so add 2 tablespoons of honey. This is honey from our beehives, and it's not processed, so even though it started very watery, it's getting much more thick. If you'd like some more depth of color and flavor, you could substitute the honey for molasses. Give that a mix. And 1 packet or 2 teaspoons of active dry yeast, not instant yeast. Give that a good mix, and we're gonna let this stand for 5 minutes until it's nice and foamy. If it's not foamy, start over again because your yeast have perished. Sad. You might love rye bread, but not understand what rye is. Rye is closely related to wheat, but it's not the same thing, and there are different kinds of rye flour, just like there's different kinds of wheat flour. This recipe is gonna use medium rye, but there's light rye, dark rye, and there's a 4th kind called pumpernickel, and I love pumpernickel bread. It's super dark, but that's a different recipe. So I recommend using medium rye for this. You're gonna have a ton of flavor, a nice color, and if you don't have it, you could use light or dark and get a good result still. 5 minutes later, my yeast is very foamy and happy. I'm gonna pop this onto a scale, and we're gonna add our flours, not just rye flour. Rye flour tastes delicious. It's kind of tangy and sour, kind of like sourdough vibes, but it has so little gluten, you wouldn't be able to develop the structure, and your bread would be really dense. To help it along, we're gonna use some bread flour. 1.5 cups or 160 grams of medium rye flour. Remembering you could use light or dark rye flour if preferred. Now I want 2 3/4 cups or 330 grams of bread flour. The bread flour is gonna give us that nice structure. By the way, if you like my videos, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. There are 2 new recipes every single week. I'm also adding in a tablespoon of vegetable oil, that's 15 mils. I'm adding 1 3/4 teaspoons of salt, 1/2, 1/4, plus 1. And 1 tablespoon of caraway seeds. I love this flavor so much. I have a caraway seed stuffed salmon in my book. It's delicious. That one right there. Grab a spatula and we're gonna mix this together before it goes into our mixer. Oh my gosh, the caraway seeds in this is so good. Grab your dough hook and clean that spatula off. We're gonna pop this on and mix on medium-low for 6 to 8 minutes until it really comes together and starts gathering around our dough hook. I'll show you what that looks like. There we go. Set a timer and we will be right back. My dough has been mixing and mixing for 8 minutes, and I wanna show you it's totally balled around the hook, but a normal dough won't be very sticky. This is a stickier dough. So right now, it's definitely very tacky. Don't add more flour to this recipe. It doesn't need it. It just might be a bit sticky. If it's sticking to your hands, moisten them and then handle the dough. That's the solution. And if you're wondering why we used bread flour instead of all-purpose for this recipe, it's because the rye flour had so little gluten, we want to supplement it with a flour that has extra gluten. Bread flour has much more gluten than cake flour. AP is in the middle. This is ready for a nice rise, so we're gonna transfer it to a slightly oiled bowl. Let's add some oil to this bowl. A tablespoon or less is fine. And work it up the sides. It smells so nice. I love this bread. Form it into a ball, place that in your bowl, and we're gonna flip this so it's all nicely coated. Now grab a bonnet or some cling film. We're gonna keep our dough in a warm, cozy place for 30 to 45 minutes or until it's doubled in size. In you go. 15 minutes into your second rise, preheat your oven to 350. It needs to be nice and hot. Less than an hour later, and my dough is looking very nice indeed. It's time to dump it out and give it some structure so it rises into a beautiful loaf. Lightly flour your surface, and I have a bench scraper at hand. This is your friend whenever you're making bread. It's gonna lift things off the countertop so you won't have any tears. And we're gonna stretch and shape this into a 9-inch square. A lot of times when you make a loaf at home, you're going to fold it or roll it to give it some structure for the second rise. About 9 inches. And now we're gonna roll this up just like that. If your dough is sticking to the countertop, which mine didn't, use your bench scraper. When you use a fabric bonnet like this, it allows the bread to breathe, which is good and bad. The bad part is it can dry the top out. But if you're doing something like this, the top is ever so slightly dried, so it's not gonna stick to the countertop. Now we're gonna pinch the seams on the sides together. Pincha, little star. Just like that, nice and tight, and fold it under the loaf. And repeat for the other side. Fold it under. There you are. Continuing the theme of please don't stick, I'm gonna add a little bit of baking spray. You can use a 9x5 or a 1-pound loaf pan, which is slightly smaller. Both will work. A piece of parchment paper as a sling will help things come out really easily, just in case. It's like your insurance policy. And now we're gonna carefully place our loaf into our loaf pan. Seam side down, pretty side up. It looks just like this, and gonna loosely cover it one more time, and it can go in for a second rise. This dough is gonna double in size and come over the rim of the pan, so I don't want it to stick to whatever I'm adding on top, plastic or fabric. So a little bit of oil, just like that, on top will make sure that doesn't happen. Okay, I'm adding this back on. Back into a warm, cozy place for 35 to 45 minutes. Second rise complete, and look at this beautiful loaf of bread. Our rye bread is ready to go into the oven 350 for 35 to 40 minutes or until it's golden, puffed, and sounds hollow when you tap it. In you go. Out of the oven, puffed, golden, and smelling amazing. Let this cool in the pan for a couple minutes, then pull it out and transfer it to a wire rack. Allow it to cool completely, give it a slice, and just like that, your rye bread is ready to enjoy. Tons of flavor, and those caraway seeds really come through. I hope you get a chance to make this delicious bread, and if you like my videos, hit that subscribe button and check out my bread playlist.